Hello, classmates. Today I'm going to be giving you a small presentation about the Victorian upper class. This is my agenda. I'm going to start by asking, who were the upper class? As you may well know, there are the upper, the middle, and the lower class. The lower class being the more populous, and the upper class is the least populous of them. In this class we can find the royalty, which were mainly comprised of the royal family, but we can also find lords and barons. So these royal titles were a big part of the extended aristocracy. You can see that there are dukes, marquises, earls, viscounts, and barons, and many of their rank and actual power, if you want to call it like that, came depending on their title, but also how senior the titles are. So even though you may have two earls, if one of them was founded at an earlier time, that earl would be, of course, more senior and would be treated with more reverence than the other, even though they're both from the same title. So, the upper class Victorian was typically a person of sophistication. They were expected to dress reservedly but also elegantly, and they were expected to uphold a strict public set of rules. So those included etiquette, but also, just social interactions in general in the public sphere were very were very were very policed. They were not, or it was not favorable to be seen in places which a person of your class ought not to assist. Men typically handle financial affairs and many of the things in the private sphere, and women, while expected to be, the angels of the house, had a lot of free time on their own because they mainly relied on servants, which would cater to many of their basic needs, allowing them to have a lot of free time for socializing and the maintenance of hobbies such as music, the arts, sports, etc. While there was a possibility for interclass exchange, that was not something that used to happen a lot. The upper classes had more ability and freedom to go abroad, for example, and they would also have the possibility to have extra houses, states, retreat houses, summer houses, through which they could go either to have parties and social events, or mainly just to escape the pressures of a more active social life. So I'm going to be speaking a little bit about socio-historical context, or why were the upper class like that. I will be boiling this question down to mainly three reasons. One of which would be religion. Religion, while having lost a lot of its potential throughout the late stages of the Middle Ages, still hold a significant play of power in society, particularly in England, because as I don't know if you know, but the church in England is actually part of the state. So the king or the queen are the supreme entities, the supreme beings when it comes to the church. This is because Edward VIII, who split the church from the Catholic Church, dictated so. And as such, he became the head of the church, but while also being the head of state. So the church has a role in government, and as such, it continued to hold a relevant position of power within society. Then we have science. Science started to gain a lot of traction due to the first and the second industrial revolutions, and their advancements in fields such as medicine, hygiene, and just basic production of stuff started to become more noticeable at the time, and that led to, of course, a lot of anxieties, but it also led to a lot of changing aspects within your social life. So, for example, the advancement of hygiene, which was big at the time, something that started not just as a scientific endeavor but also as a social endeavor, started to blur the lines between those who could afford personal hygiene and those who could not. Because previously only the aristocracy had the access to personal amenities. That no longer became the case due to scientific advancements. Then we have the idea of progress. Progress is a concept that, of course, arises out of the Enlightenment ideals and the French Revolution and its after effects. And this idea of progress is going to be taking a key role after this era. But it is at this point that it becomes relevant. What is my purpose as a person in society? And progress states that it is to better not only yourself but humanity as a whole. So this idea of progress is going to start changing many of the social roles and hierarchies that were a given for many centuries, because now your position is not just given. Now society is going to be asking, what do you give to society? What is your purpose in society? So, in order to analyze a little bit better this mess of a class, I'm going to be relying on the concept of the spirit of capitalism by Max Weber, the ideas of the bourgeoisie and the means of production, and also that of Pierre Bourdieu and his idea of cultural production. My main thesis is that there came a new class, the middle class, the bourgeoisie, those who acquire wealth by the mere fact of being able to produce in a way. And this, of course, has to function not only as an economical system, but to function as a societal system. It needs an ethic. So, hand in hand with science, the increasing rationalization of the world leads to the creation of some rationalized ethics, which no longer uphold the mandates of the old system but shape new systems. In this sense, Max Weber is essential because he states that basically capitalism is not just a system, but an ethical disposition. An ethics that, for him, are birthed from Protestantism and the way that it relates to society, that which demands of individuals to society, is what shapes capitalism. And this state of ethics is going to start to govern the Victorian times. These ideas of austerity and how you should display your wealth and what you should do with your personal duties and with your personal benefits and how you should relate to society in that sense, they are increasingly shaped by this notion of this Protestant ethic. This is going to inform then that spirit of capitalism, that idea that through production we can modify the world, and that is going to give more power to the middle class. And in this sense, the upper class is going to start looking at it and is going to say, we are losing power. And them realizing that they are losing power, that the hierarchy that holds them at top is no longer supported, that they need to uphold it, they start to revel. Instead of adapting to the new system, they start to revel in a process which Pierre Bourdieu calls cultural production. in rituals which try to reinforce their position and their hierarchy in society as a means of trying to withhold and control that power that they feel is waning. So their elaborate ceremonies, their patronage of the arts, or even the cultivation of their distinct lifestyles and cultivated lifestyles is not just the amenities that they could afford, but then it becomes a recognition of themselves, of their waning power. So, for example, we have Pierre Bourdieu saying, aristocracies are essentialists. Regarding existence as an emanation of essence, they set no intrinsic value on the deeds and misdeeds enrolled in the records and registers of bureaucratic memory. They prize them only insofar as they clearly manifest in the nuance of their manner that their one aspiration is the perpetuating and celebrating of the essence by virtue of which they are accomplished. So if I'm a Victorian upper class citizen and I get to be very cultivated, very intellectual because I have free time to read a lot of books and I have a lot of money to buy those books, that should be regarded in its essence because I am able to do it. It's not how I did it, the deeds and misdeeds, or even my personal flaws in doing so. It's just the fact that I am able to do it, and that should be a role for society, a role model for society that should be celebrated. And that is their mindset when they take part in this elaborate social interactions. Then we have Max Weber, but this irrational use was exemplified in the outward forms of luxury with their code condemned as idolatry of the flesh, however natural they had appeared to the feudal mind. On the other hand, they approved the rational and utilitarian uses of wealth, which were willed by God for the needs of the individual and the community. They did not wish to impose mortification on the man of wealth, but the use of his means for necessary and practical things. So that idea, that notion of austerity that I told you about before, is going to inform how the middle class increasingly is going to start to judge the upper class. It's going to spread through society and is going to then be adopted by the upper classes as a way to judge themselves because they have a lot of luxurious wealth, but expending it in a lavishly manner is not going to be well regarded upon. So in order to maintain their position, they need to start to be conscious of the way that they spend their wealth and how they spend their wealth and into what they spend their wealth. And that starts to take a toll because they do have an obscene amount of wealth, but they cannot just flaunt it. And if they flaunt it, with that comes with their societal repercussions. Finally, we have Karl Marx. The bourgeoisie has stripped off its halo every occupation hitherto honored and looked up to with reverent awe. It has converted the physician, the lawyer, the priest, the poet, the man of science into its paid wage laborers. So many of the traditional positions that hold a lot of power at that time are disregarded now. They don't hold that respectable and venerable position anymore because now everything is regarded upon the goals that are achieved, the products that are produced. So you're not going to see, no longer going to see the lawyer as that representative of, the societal man and how you should behave, but as just a person who provides a service. So that is going to increasingly put into question what role do the aristocracy play within society. So finally, to answer ourselves, why were they like that? I would say that they were the way that they were because they were trying to withhold to the power that they were given or born into, but increasingly the times were against that. So they found themselves in a contradictory statement, They were extremely wealthy, but they could not make use of that wealth in contradictory manners or in ways that were thought of as extravagant. And as such, and given the fact that they were so wealthy, they started to try to bypass those rules. And in doing so, they expose, the arbitrariness of their wealth. They were as flawed and they were as, capable of doing the same things that the lower class were. So where was that exceptionality that hold them in that position? The revealing of this contradiction obviously led to their downfall. I would say aided or not due to the advances in technology, which allowed many people to either realize or it made it more apparent that these people were just as incompetent, were just as incapable as many of those in the lower classes, and that they were not there because they earned it in any shape, way, or form, but that they were just born into it. I'm going to end up by citing a couple of literary examples that display this contradiction at the time. First, we have Louise by Saki, which is real name is H. Monroe. Saki's is a short story about Louise, who is an aristocrat who skillfully manipulates social conventions to maintain her advantageous position. It is a satirical story. It follows Louise Thropplestan, a young woman who manipulates social conventions in order to avoid work, marriage, or even responsibility. She pretends to be delicate and lacking initiative and incapable of independent thought, which ensures she remains financially dependent, that she doesn't have to adhere to many of these new values that were being brought up by the bourgeoisie and the middle class, but that he can keep maintaining this world of luxury lifestyle. A lot of the humor in the story comes from her absent-minded aunt, which is Jane Troublestan, who hardly notices her presence or even remembers where they left her. So much of the story is just them trying to find her because they don't know where she is. And at the end, it is shown that Louise is exactly where her aunt left her, and she was just reading to a servant. So she has no initiative, no desire of her own to do anything, and as such, that is what allows her to live in the luxury that she lives, but ultimately her demise, because she's not able to adapt to the values of the time. She said she wouldn't move unless she was told to. Louise has no initiative. Then we have Lady Windermere's Fan by Oscar Wilde. This is a comedy of manners. It follows Lady Windermere's, who suspects that her husband is having an affair with Mr. Erlyn, who is a woman with a scandalous past. She considers running away with Lord Darlington, who has an initiative of his own. He finds that she is not appreciated enough, or that she is a woman that could benefit from having a man like him. During the play, we come to know that Mr. Erling is actually Lady Windermere's long-lost mother, and someone who had lost her previous position of wealth due to her outrageous behavior. So here we have a quote. Do you know I'm afraid that good people do a great deal of harm in this world, and Lady Windermere, I sometimes think that perhaps you are a little too good for. I am afraid of being haughty, says Lady Windermere, Lord Darlington, but I suppose it is my good opinion of myself that makes me so. And he replies, "We're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars." To which the Duchess of Berwick replies, "Lord Darlington, that is a very dangerous maxim. It seems to me a thoroughly immoral sentiment." So he says that we are all flawed, that we are all in the gutter, in a place of filth, of waste, but that some of us, playing him, right, are looking at the stars, are aspiring to something else. And as such, that sentiment is dangerous because it basically undermines the idea that they are a class that upholds a morally high position and as such deserving of the benefit that that high position entails. The play highlights how the Victorian upper class's obsession with appearances and moral purity is ultimately self-destructive. In the end, Mrs. Erlin has to make the sacrifice in order for Lady Windermere to not suffer the consequences of social transgression, which she was about to. So here we have my bibliography, and thank you.